Welcome to Magnificat TV news program dedicated to providing news from the church. Today is Wednesday, April 24th, 2024, and these are our headlines. On Wednesday, during the audience, the Pope praised people who defend non-negotiable values, but who do so with the virtue of temperance. The Vatican has made an official protest to France over a judgment condemning Cardinal Ouellet for expelling a nun from his monastery. Hundreds of young people have revitalized their faith in a village in France, where the vast majority is Muslim. In Germany, it is believed that they will eventually prevail. A large group of Christians have been killed in Nigeria by Muslims, without the government, which is Muslim, having done anything to prevent it. More than 50,000 people participated in a large pro-life rally in Poland, rejecting the government's attempt to allow abortion. Once again, the non-negotiable principles promoted by the Pope. On this occasion, it was Pope Francis who did so, in a speech temperance.
Claiming non-negotiable values, but at the same time understanding people and showing empathy for them. This is the indication of Pope Francis, who thus returns indirectly to the controversy that followed the recent statement of the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith on the sex change, gender ideology, and the end of life. Although the temperate person, the Pope said, knows how to control his or her irascibility, this does not mean that he or she is perennially seen with a peaceful and smiling face. In fact, it is sometimes necessary to be indignant, but always in the right way. These are the words: the right measure, the right way. A word of reproach is sometimes headier than sour. Rancorous silence. The temperate person knows that there is nothing more uncomfortable than correcting another, but he also knows that it is necessary. In certain cases, the temperate person manages to keep the extremes together. He affirms absolute principles, claims non-negotiable values, but also knows how to understand people and show empathy for them, he added. Following Sunday's Regina Coeli, Pope Francis issued a pressing appeal against any action that could fuel the spiral of violence in the Middle East, warning of the danger of an escalation into an even wider conflict in the region. He advocated in support of peace, urging all nations to stand behind the coexistence of Israelis and Palestinians in two separate states, guaranteeing security conditions for both. He further emphasized, it is their deep and legitimate desire, and it is their right also, to neighboring states.
The Vatican has lodged a formal protest with France for interfering in an internal church matter, the expulsion of a nun from a monastery.
The Civil Court of Lorient in France determines that the expulsion of Sister Marie Ferréol from the monastery, where she lived for 34 years, was an unfair dismissal, and has decreed that she be compensated with more than 200,000 euros for moral damages, to be paid, among others, by Cardinal Ouellet. The Holy See considers this to be an interference in internal church affairs. The conflict began in 2011 when Sister Marie Ferréol denounced serious abuses inside the monastery of Pont-Calais in Britain. These accusations led Pope Francis to commission Cardinal Marc Ouellet to conduct an investigation in 2020, which led to the temporary and then definitive expulsion of the nun in 2021 for having caused a climate of fear and suspicion. According to the court, the expulsion did not follow proper procedures, lacked impartiality, and no aftercare was offered to Sister Mary, who indeed up indignation. The judges imposed significant damages against Cardinal Ouellet, his collaborators, and the monastery for not having respected Sister Marie Ferreol's rights and defense for the material and moral damages caused. The Vatican has expressed its concern about the sentence. It could constitute a grave violation of the fundamental rights to religious freedom and freedom of association of the Catholic faithful. The Vatican argues that a civil court should not intervene in matter of internal disciplines and membership of a religious institute, and has sent a note of protest to the French embassy. The Vatican's note verbal details that Cardinal Ouellet carried out an apostolic visit to the monastery by papal mandate, and that the canonical measures deemed appropriate were taken. In addition, the Holy See stresses that Ouellet never received a summons from the French court, which could invalidate the process.
Against all odds, it has been in French town with a huge Muslim majority that young people are participating more in Mass and in religious events.
Trapos is a town located in the Île-de-France region and is 25 kilometers from Paris. 70% of its population of 32,000 inhabitants is Muslim. It is precisely in that town that the Catholic faith is experiencing a remarkable revival. Despite the challenges and negative perceptions often faced by the suburb, marked by stories of radicalism and unemployment, the Church of St. George stands as a beacon of hope. The young Christians of Trapos are particularly visible and expressive about their faith. They are not ashamed to tell their friends that they are Catholics, explains Sister Germanine, a religious of the Congregation of the Daughters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, who was initially reluctant in her environment. She is in charge of youth ministry in the parish. This Catholic community has defied expectations by growing in members. Muslims do not hesitate to show themselves, neither do we, declared Father Gouliet, emphasizing the desire of young people to live their faith openly. The church is overflowing with faithful, with an average age of 30 and many baptisms are taking place. Meanwhile, in the neighboring Germany, fears are growing that the country could end up becoming an Islam republic. The majority of Germans, 55%, fear an Islamization of the Europe, according to a survey. Only a third were not afraid. The fear is most negotiably among those aged 50 to 59, where 2 out of 3 respondents feared Islamization of Europe, 68%. Among 18 to 29 years old, it is 1 in 3, 37%. Among Muslims, 1 in 5, 21%, fears the advance of Islam. Germany is home to 5.5 million Muslims. This represents 66% of the total population.
Muslims have once again murdered defenseless Christians in Nigeria before the passivity of the government, which for 3 days allowed the slaughter.
Islamist terrorists from the Fulani ethnic group carried out a 3-day massacre in the Diocese of Panskin, in the region known as Nigeria's Middle Belt, killing 29 Christians, wounding 2 others, and burning churches and houses. The attacks began on Friday and continued throughout Saturday and Sunday. Unusually on Sunday, the attack took place in the morning and afternoon. This is a departure from the attackers' unusual method of acting only at night. Now it happens in broad daylight, when people least expect it. These attacks were designed to drive the landowners off the land, so the Muslim extremists can take control. The area is overwhelmingly populated by Christians, and militant attackers need space to spread their religious beliefs. These attacks were modeled in the Christmas and Easter attacks. Last December, around Christmas time, there was another wave of killing when the Fulani attacked 26 villages in Bukos, killing over 300 Christians. There is a government inaction in the face of this conflict at all levels. The government's main purpose is to protect lives and property, and they have failed to do so. Most of the promises made immediately after the Christmas Eve attacks have not yet been implemented.
Thousands of Poles have taken to the streets to defend life, opposing the government's plans to legalize abortion, thus returning to the times of communism.
Under the slogan, "Long Live Poland," the National March for Life took place in the streets of Warsaw on Sunday. According to the organizer, 50,000 people participated in the event. It was a demonstration in defense of life, family, values, and the country's independence from outside influences and abortion legislation. The National March for Life was sponsored by the Episcopal Conference. The event focused on the defense of human life from conception to natural death and was complemented by activities such as masses in cathedrals and the Diaper for the Little One campaign to offer concrete support to mothers and children in need. During the rally, various demonstrations in support of life took place, including the testimony of a mother of 7 whose unborn baby's heartbeat was heard by those in attendance. Significant speakers participated, including Marek Jurek, former Speaker of the Polish Parliament. Jurek commented on the situation in France, asserting that what had been legalized there was not freedom but murder, and warned of the danger that permissive abortion legislation in other countries could negatively influence Poland.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to commenting on the Pope's words on non-negotiable principles and how they should be defended.
In 2006, shortly after being elected, Pope Benedict XVI met in Rome with a very large group, some 500 parliamentarians of the European People's Party, before whom he enunciated for the first time what has since become known as non-negotiable principles. Non-negotiable principles that must mark not only the agenda the Catholic politicians must try to carry out, but also the vote of the Catholics. He spoke about it again the following year, when the apostolic exhortation Sacrosanctum Caritatis was published, and 2 years later, in 2009, before a group of bishops on an ad limina visit, Pope Benedict XVI spoke clearly that it was inexcusable to stop guiding Catholics according to the non-negotiable principles, that it was the duty of bishops to guide Catholics in the matter of the vote based on these principles. This was not the first time that the Church had spoken out on one of these issues. First of all, we must remember the 3 non-negotiable principles. Firstly, defense of life from conception to natural death. Secondly, defense of the family, understood as the union of a man and a woman, a union through marriage, a stable union open to children. And thirdly, the defense of the right of parents to have the last word in education of their children and to be able to prevent the state from educating their children. These 3 non-negotiable principles, as I said, were enunciated as such by Pope Benedict XVI in 2006 for the first time. At this, the issue of abortion had already been taken into account by the Church, which had imposed publish with the maximum possible penalty, which is excommunication. Those who participated directly in an abortion, and even politicians who in their legislative work had promoted or supported the approval of abortion laws, at least more abortionists than those that existed at that time. The non-negotiable principles were an effective reference throughout the pontificate of Pope Benedict XVI. The issues, especially the issue of abortion in the United States, had been important even before, during the triennium from 1974 to 1979, when Cardinal Bernardin, the Archbishop of Chicago, who at the time was not yet Archbishop of Chicago, was president of the Episcopal Conference. Bernardin, because there was strong pressure against abortion and pressure to orient Catholics on the issue of abortion in the election, elaborated a doctrine that became known as the seamless robe. It should be remembered that Bernardin became president of the episcopate in 1974, and he was in 1973, when the American Supreme Court approved the possibility of carrying out abortion legally. The doctrine of the seamless tunic of Bernardin said that he spoke of the tunic that our Lord had, which was woven in one piece, and that at the time of dividing it, his few possessions, his few garments before crucifying him, the soldiers had decided not to tear it in pieces, but to cast lots for it. Cardinal Bernardin said that this was what had to be done. That of the seamless tunic, not to tear it into pieces. When it came to orientating the vote, abortion was indeed an important issue, but it was not the only important issue, and it was necessary to take into account the whole. The whole was, for example, immigration, the right of workers, the right of women. Abortion was one more element in this. The doctrine of the seamless tunic of Cardinal Bernardin was what allowed many American Catholics to continue voting for the Democrat Party, even though it was becoming more and more radical. It should not be forgotten that the Democratic Party had traditionally become the party of Catholics in the United States, less so for a vast majority of Catholics, and that for them to renounce their party and that of their predecessors was very difficult. Justification came to them with this doctrine of the seamless tunic. But then came John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and then the situation began to change. And this situation caused a crisis in the United States during the presidential race between Biden and Trump. Biden, a Catholic and abortionist. The issue of abortion was important in that election struggle, won by Biden, who is still president, increasingly radical on the issue of abortion, to the point that a large group of American bishops considered the possibility of applying the canon law that establishes excommunication, late sententiae, automatically excommunication, and to prohibit access to the communion not only to him, but to the then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Catholic also, because of her manifest, very clear, explicit support for abortion. They received a letter from the Vatican which said, "It will be misleading to give the impression that abortion and euthanasia alone constitute the only serious matters of Catholics' social doctrine. They demand the highest level of responsibility of the part of Catholics." End quote. In other words, a return to the doctrine of the seamless tunic of Cardinal Bernardin. Abortion now euthanasia was also included. Well, these are important issues. There is no doubt. It has never been said otherwise, but it is one more. There is nothing else that can be done. In the face of this, the collective attempt and repeated of a group of bishops, an important group of bishops, to deny communion to Biden fell. It was stopped and struck. Well, we have been like that until very recently. Dignitas Infinita has been published, that is to say, a document of the doctrine of the faith, where the attacks against human dignity are listed, and abortion, gender ideology, and euthanasia occupy a very prominent place. Something has to change after this, but to top it up, this Wednesday, in the message that the Pope gives every Wednesday on the occasion of the general audience, Pope Francis has used again the concept of non-negotiable principles. I may be wrong. I have not tried. I have not been able to find it. I may be wrong. It seems difficult to me to do it. All the words that Pope Francis has said throughout his pontificate. He has ever been used this concept. I did not remember it. I think it is the first time that Pope Francis uses this concept, non-negotiable principles. And it has been used immediately after Dignitas Infinita was published. It is true that the Pope has said that it has to be applied taking into account two things. First, moderation, and second, attentive listening to the reasons that those who think differently from us have. And I completely agree with the Pope. That is, we cannot defend life using violence. Defending life with insults, with threats, or with physical violence is not our way, nor can it ever be. And I am not referring only to life. The three non-negotiable principles: life, family, and parental rights. Moderation is essential. And in the same way, it seems to me not only charitable but intelligent to listen to those who have a different approach than ours, because that helped us to see if we are right or not. If we have to modify our approaches in something or even help us to reaffirm ourselves more in them, but moderation and listening cannot mean lukewarmness. We are at such a transcendental moment in the history of mankind, not only because of the threats of war, but also because of the situation we are experiencing with regards to the birth rate. In the year 2022, which are the latest data available, more than half of the people who died in the world, including those who died due to COVID, more than half of them died due to abortion. And that is taking into account that this does not include abortion by chemical means, the morning after pill, for example, because nobody knows whether or not there was an abortion, among other things. The situation of the family is equally serious. There are no marriages, not only in the church. We are not talking about the worldwide. That is to say, the situation is so serious that it's not only affecting us Catholics, but the destiny of humanity is at stake. Faced with this situation, it is suicidal for the world, and of course for us Catholics, to take a lukewarm, ambiguous position. The non-negotiable principles must once again guide the vote in a decisive way, not as one more element in a set of 20 things, but in the decisive way to vote, as Pope Francis has just said. Although he did not speak of the vote, he just said it. It is enough to quote these two words, non-negotiable principles, for everyone to know what he is referring to with the announcements he has made, and which he has done very well in making. We must remember those words that are written in the Apocalypse, because we are perhaps facing an apocalyptic situation. We must remember those words written by John, quote, "I vomit the lukewarm." We cannot be lukewarm at this time when it comes to defending the three principles, non-negotiable principles. Naturally and unfortunately, we are always faced with the dilemma of what to choose, because there is no, or it is very difficult to find something that fully satisfies us at the time, for example, to vote. It is very annoying. It even creates problems of conscience to have to vote for the lesser evil. It creates them for me, of course, but there are situations in which there is no other choice. And this is true for the United States, for Mexico, and for all countries where Catholics are still relative significant force when it comes to influencing the vote. It is the duty of pastors to pay attention to the Pope, to pay attention to Dignitas Infinita. Pope Francis has just said that the non-negotiable principles must be taken into account again. It is the duty of pastors to pay attention to this. It is true that the chances of being listed to are decreasing, unfortunately, but that which is important is not as important as the fact that they keep quiet. Our faith, our Catholics, need to know what to do at a time like this, when more than half of the deaths in the world are due to abortion, when no children are born, when there are no families. In this context, we continue to be ambiguous, and we continue to apply the seamless tonic, that this is just another element. Then the words of Saint John in the Apocalypse will apply to us. I vomit the lukewarm. God willing, this will not happen. Until next week, God willing.
We will continue to keep you informed of what is happening in the church. In the meantime, you can check our website at www.magnificat.tv. Until next week, God willing.